Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all again. So today's session, um, as we were looking at the applications, not just you guys, the ones who were chosen, but also a lot of people who were eliminated from the program, we found a skill gap um, in almost all applications, and that was um, how you guys are presenting yourself and being able to write a professional bio that represents your work. Some people, and these were eliminated, were overwriting and exaggerating about the work that they do. And a lot of you guys that are selected were actually so humble about what they were writing about themselves. There were a lot of applicants who we know in real life are doing great things, but they were not able to translate that to words in their applications. And throughout your career, you will be faced with a lot of situations where you're invited on stage, or sometimes you're asked to give a tweet and to summarize what you think in a tweet or in a few sentences. And this skill is very, very important for you to be able to market yourself on an international platform. So this session today was not actually part of our initial program, but after screening all the applications and identifying that gap, we figured that this would be an important session that you would benefit from, whether you're a final participant or not. That's why this is a public session. So for the ones who exaggerated, you know how to be a little bit humble, and for the ones who were too humble, you shouldn't be that humble. So this is how you can be short, but not cut anything from the great work that you're doing. Moneera is great at doing that. She is an international development practitioner, a candidate at Sciences Po Paris, and she has experience in the fields of economic development, youth empowerment, and gender integration. And if you Google her, you will find all these amazing marketing materials and bios on her that she writes herself. So we have her today to transfer that skill to you guys. And throughout today's session, we will have some small practice on the side where you will be asked to write a quick tweet or give a small remark, just as a practice for you to just make sure that you're learning from Moneera. And with that, I will give the stage to you, Moneera, and good luck, everyone.
Thank you, Hedra and Becca, so much for putting all this amazing work together and for having me today. I'm very excited to be with you, and I'm also looking forward to share what I know and getting to learn from everyone here and your experience and expertise. I'll share my screen now so we can start. Okay, give a second. Oops, no, not that. Sorry. Okay, what's happening now? Let me stop sharing and get what to do. Mm-hmm. Mm. I mean, no matter how much we use Zoom every day for 6 7 hours, I was still don't never manage to. There's always a technical problem happening, so I apologize. Yeah, can you see my screen now? Perfect. Yeah, so as Hadria said, my name is Moneera Yassien, and I'm in Follow from 2018, 19, 18, I think, yeah. And I'm a development practitioner, and I'm currently doing my master's at Paris School for International Affairs, International Development. I have worked with the United Nations Development Program, and I'm running an organization in Sudan working on gender-based violence and women empowerment. It's called Amina. And today I'm going to be sharing with you my experience in telling my story and showcasing the work that I'm doing. And I'm sure many of you has faced that challenge. It took me time to get to where I am today, and articulating all of that journey together is always the hard part, because I'm sure all of you, since you're here, you've done great work, you have done a lot of work, and you already have impact in real life. But putting that together and telling that story in a shareable way is a challenge for everyone, and I still struggle up to this day on that. But so what are we going to be doing today? So we're trying to tell you a story so you can use it to quickly introduce yourself in a large meeting, in a conference, or if you're asked to give a speech at the UN or any other international organization, any other institutions, you will be able to tell this story and you have it in the front of your mind. So you just say it out, and then we will see how we can also do sort of like an elevator pitch and short tweet or tweet of telling this story. So disclaimer, I know it's very awkward and it's so uncomfortable, and there's also a cultural aspect of it. So in my culture, I'm Sudanese. So whenever you talk about what you do, they always, people will be like, oh, you're bragging, you're this, you're that. So this, so and we also I was raised up in a culture where we're asked to be humble with everyone. So I also find it really hard to get out of that comfort zone and just say what I'm doing without sounding like someone who's bragging or just trying to show off. And everyone says there's a fine line between the two. So yeah, so if you're not comfortable with this, if you think it's awkward, that's fine. That's the first disclaimer. And the second disclaimer is that I'm not an expert in this. I still feel like I have a lot to do. I don't like, I rewrite my story every now and then because I feel it's not enough. But and I was also, honestly, I was very surprised when Hedry and Becca told me that, oh, you're doing it really good. I was like, really? Because I've always doubted myself in that area. So if you have that feeling now, it's fine. It's normal, and yeah. So just for all of us to be on the same page. And also, I will be sharing my experience. So everything you see here is my experience, and also some little bit of research. But if you think something is missing, if you have something more to tell, please feel free to interrupt me at any point. Yeah, so let's start with putting your story together. And by a story, I mean the work that you're doing. How can we tell it, use the storytelling to tell about our work? So I sort of tried to summarize this in 6 points. And the first point is, remember that it's yours. You have done this, you have been there from the beginning, you know it better, and like no one will be able to tell it like better than you. So just know that and start from that point. And then there is sort of elements that you need to make sure that they are there. The first one is, how did you start? So the trigger, your aha moment. And if I give an example from my own work, I started my organization AMNA from a Facebook post. And during the 16 Days to End Violence Against Women campaign, I wrote a post. I included a link for Saraha account where I asked women to voice their experiences with violence. And then I start to get many stories and many incidents from women, and I shared that on Facebook. And that was my starting point. That's what triggered me to see the need. So identify that trigger, that aha moment when you identify the need. I'm sure we all have that one incident in your life which driven you to this point. It could be something from your childhood, something from your life. And also remember that, to what extent do you want to share this? So it's important to know, to ask yourself this question: how did I start, and what was that moment for me? And then see what you can share from it, because also there is personal aspect of it, so you may not want to share that much, but that's up to you. And then once you know how you start, you go to what you did. What did you do? to solve that problem, to solve to address that moment. So in my story, after there had so many stories and so many people accusing me of not telling the truth, and this is all made up stories, and but I also found support from so many young people who are interested in knowing what I was doing and they want to help with that. So what I decided to do is I started an organization that's raise awareness about violence against women in Sudan, collect data about the level of awareness, and go to the grassroots of the problem to solve it. So this is what I'm doing now, and this is what I'm currently doing. And as you see that it's art, I could articulate it in 3 points, which are we're doing so much more, but these are the three main things that I'm doing. That we're doing in the organization. So think of your work, try to see what are the main elements of your work, and the main elements which are the response for the problem, and put it with them together. Then think about what keeping you going on. What's it up to I started in 2017, and up to now the organization is running. Even if I'm not in Sudan, it's there, it's well established. So and what makes me keep on doing this is the impact that I've seen. We have worked with people in refugee camps. We have worked with women from very disadvantaged backgrounds. So, and I have seen the response. I have seen that change. Maybe it's not big, but it's there. And it's not the whole society, but I have seen. I have tested this solution that I have created, and I think it's working. And I have numbers to prove that we have worked with almost 600 young women and men in Sudan from different backgrounds. So I believe this is important. The work I'm doing is important, and I can prove it with numbers, and I can see the impact, and it's what's keeping me going. So start to think of what's keeping you going. Why are you still doing this up to this day? From the day you start, from now, and not just this month. What will keep you also to the future? Continue doing that work. Uh, so once you have these three elements, how did you start? What did you do, and what's keeping you going? You sort of have the body of your story. So now it's the time to show that you're expert in this area, you're expert in this field. So talk about the problem in numbers, or try to show that you know this area. And honestly, no one knows it better. I'm sure you can identify many gaps in policies, in other projects that's similar to yours. So make use of this experience and try to show it all, to show that. So it doesn't has to be something like a big research paper. No, it has to be, in my experience, I've seen this and I've seen that. For example, in my experience, I have seen that the gender integration in policies in Sudan is never considered. And I can give examples for that. So I make sure that I always have an angle of expertise that I put in my story, and it also depends on where are you going to present this story, and we'll talk about this more. But remember to always think about this when you're telling about your story, or putting your story together. There are different ways to do this, and always the way you choose should reflect your personality. I'm an organized person. I love to have things in order, so I always use a timeline. So I start in 2017. I did that in 2018. I did that, and so on. But you may be someone who like to tell their story in geographically. So you started in this area and then you move to that area. So always find find a way to tell your story in a way that represents you, and reflects something about your personality. So as long as you have these three, you can put it any way you want. Any additions at this point? Any questions? Something you think we could include? Something you think we should include when we're putting our story together?
I think that these are very important, and I can relate from a very recent interview that I had here at the Tilburg University magazine. Um, the way they wrote the story, because I didn't write the story myself, they just interviewed me and then they put it on the magazine. It was these are basically the questions that they asked and the questions that they used to structure my story, and we received a lot of positive feedback on it. So how you started, what was the aha moment that pushed you to start what you're doing? Because the thing that inspired you will inspire others. So it's very important to start with that. And then, of course, it's the impact that's keeping you going. Otherwise, you would stop. So that is also very important for other people that are listening. And it's very important to keep in mind not to underestimate the impact and the numbers that you know, the feedback that you received. Someone telling you that you helped me, it's coming from a human, and you should take that as an impact and show it to people. So I agree with all the points, and I can relate. I am also not very good in showcasing my story and telling things about myself, and Becca knows this. I'm always struggling when they ask me for a bio or for a few sentences. That's why I'm listening very carefully here, but everything you said makes sense.
I also want to emphasize how much we have a tendency to assume things are common sense, right? And things that we're working on day in and day out, right? You all have work that you're doing on a particular sustainable development goal, on a particular part of community empowerment, gender, sustainability, poverty, education, all of these kind of things. And for you, of course this matters. And of course it's a really big problem in your local societies and all of that kind of thing. But for an international community, they might not necessarily see the way that you're connecting the dots, right? Or they might not know as much about the situation in Sudan, for example, from Moneera's story as you do. So never kind of like overestimate how much other people will know, and don't underestimate how much you know specifically about it. So it's really important to show this arc and kind of make sure that everyone has the context that you do in your impact.
Yeah, I think thank you so much, Haja and Becca, for adding these points. Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the context, and I'm telling you, no one know, like, no matter where, not everyone knows about everything. So always assume that they know nothing about what you're talking about, and start from that point. It's always a good start to assume that people knows nothing, and because even if they know you, it's your area, so you know more. So even if whatever you say is going to be presented from a different perspective, so start from this point. Make sure that you make sure that you assume that they know nothing. Whoever they are, they're not very well knowledgeable about the issue that I'm working on, because now it's from your perspective, so it's also very personal. So yeah, it makes sense to assume that they don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, any other questions, points to add? Yeah, please feel free.
Voila, you don't have anything to say?
Okay.
I have something.
Yeah. Okay.
Who was that?
I see.
Yeah,
I
let's
see.
go with Wala first, because Wala was one of the participants who is doing amazing things. Her organization is huge in the hook, and she's just so humble in telling her story.
Thank you very much, Heja. Yeah, I was focusing on that point, that how we can really be to show the real things that we do without being too humble about it. And I love the point that when Moneera is focusing on the moment that pushed you forward to start. This is really important, because this, as you already said, that this might motivate others as well, and the things that pushed you to start this thing will remain forever, I think. So whenever I feel disappointed in a point, or be tired, or I just think about the moment I started, and I get more energy. So it's really important. I really do agree. And I love the way that Moneera is doing that, to be in order, because I'm also an organized person who wanted, but I have the concern that how one cannot be boring at a point, like when you still tell your story, how you can be to inspire, but not to be boring, to over mention things or what
Or to be
you
sad.
focus
Sometimes you're
on.
worried about being looking like the story. Make sure that the story is interesting and not sad.
Exactly, and how you make people really get their attention and to love your story without get boring. So without get bored. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ala. Muhammad, you have raised hand.
Yeah, this is like a very good inputs from like Moneera. I have like one small comment. Like when we put a story in context, should we try like to, let's say, make the context close to the audience or give more context about our story? For example, when I used to explain that I have never been out of Gaza until like, let's say 2019, it feels like people a little bit feel sympathy with me or with the story, but they will never feel empathy like today with COVID-19 and everyone is locked down and the experience being like locked and can't travel and so. So here's the question: should like I like provide examples related on me, like provide more examples or on them on their context?
Yeah. Okay. Another question. Thank you, Mohammed.
There's also Muhammad, another Muhammad who wants to speak.
Yeah,
Yeah,
hello.
Muhammad.
Thank you so much for this discussion. I'm Mohammed, lived in the UK. I'm also from Sudan. I'm wondering about the part you talk about the measuring the impact, because sometimes we're struggling with calculating the KPIs for the impact we have on the community we're serving. Sometimes some people they don't know how to calculate that, or I think we need more details on that, like to measure the impact and the numbers, how to put that into context to make sense to those who are presenting our work to them, like organizations or funders, for example.
Mhm.
That one we answer in another session that is coming up in the next few weeks. That's not something Moneera can help us with.
Oh, okay.
But keep that point because we have a whole session about evaluating and assessing impact and numbers and all that. So yes, Becca is writing that in the chat as well. We have a whole, because that is very important. So we have dedicated one full session for that.
Oh, that's great.
So that's not something that Moneera can actually answer with her expertise as well.
Okay, thank you.
Someone says they don't have Ibrahim or Ahmed Ibrahim.
Salam.
Yeah.
I hope everyone is doing just fine. The essential point that I see is much needed in our part of the world, maybe in other areas as well, is to express the human side of the story, showing vulnerability and how much you have developed through that experience that you mentioned. I think that can add up to connect with people and to show them you're not a super villain. You're not you're not a robot who's working on a certain issue and just and voila, and that's it. I came up with a solution that will help humanity to move forward, and I think that's a very essential part, so people can connect with you on a personal level and really understand that you're just one of us.
Yeah, that there's a human side of you and not just a workaholic side. And that's where we say that the aha moment is important to talk about, because like we said, what inspires you and what makes you sad and then pushes you to work is important. Daniela wanted to speak.
I think
Yeah.
can you hear me? I wrote
Yeah.
it in the comments, and I think it's a common problem that I used to have, and I think a lot of people used to have in the beginning, and then you learn, is that when you're telling people your story, they need to understand it. You need to use words that are familiar. You don't choose like shortcuts or jargon that is just internal to the organization, because then you will lose people, and the point is for them to understand what you do. It's not for you to show off your internal language or culture.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. Oh, and exactly, Daniela, that's very important. All of us in our smaller networks or organizations, we have this internal language, and exactly the shortcuts that we use to identify things. It's important with that to realize that you're now talking to people outside this network, so you don't use those shortcuts. And like she said, we have done that mistake, all of us at some stage, and we learn from it. That to realize that we're now speaking to people who do not understand that internal language. I think everything you guys said is very important, and we're not here to, like I said, teach. We're just transferring the skills that we have to you guys, and these comments are not. Moneera, you can answer the ones that you can, but you don't have to have all the answers, because this is the learning journey, and we're just learning every day.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'll start with what Dan and Nada I think was saying about how our can we grab the attention of the listener and not end up being boring. I think it has to do a lot with the aha moment in your and the very first step. So always try to frame it in a way that will make it inspiring. That and don't you don't have to tell about everything, but find a way to summarize it, because you're someone who love details, that would be something interesting for you, but not everyone is willing to hear all the details. So try to find sort of a sequence of the main events and then put them together in a very catchy storytelling way. It's not like just you restating facts. No, it's your experience. It's something that you have lived, and that driven you to the moment where you start to react and take action. So make sure to present it in this way, very lively, very vividly, as if the person who's listening has actually experienced this with you. So try to show feelings also. And I think what Muhammad was saying about about being very human and express our feelings. I think this is where you get to experience to express your feelings, is when you're talking about the trigger, about what inspires you, about your aha moment. So I think that's a way. And then Muhammad also asked about the context. We will talk about the context more when we talk about how to tell our story on the stage, so leave that for a few minutes. And I think about measuring the impact. Once you figure out how you measure impact from this program, Muhammad, make sure to take the main numbers, the main figures. So use the main figures. These are the number of people we have worked with, up to this date. These are the number of areas we have reached. These are the number of geographical location. These are the numbers of countries we have worked in. So sort of try to give main figures, which would like an usual, and always use your biggest figure in your main story. See that if I have really good impact in this area, this is something you need. This is something you show. And sometimes also, and when we have I'm saying use numbers, because it tells you don't need to add many words. If you say we have worked in 7 states out of 10 states, that's a story itself. And also you could use the impact, that's something to remain humane, to just give example of someone who you have worked with and told you your work have changed my life in this way. So these are the example of the impact you could share, but measuring that is another topic. Yeah, if we're all good, I think we can move to the next point. Shall we move forward? Okay, I'll take this silence as a yes. Oops. And then let's talk more now about your online persona. Now you have your story, you have worked on putting your story together, you can use it in any way, in anywhere you want. So make sure you actually do that for real. Sit down with yourself for a few hours. I don't think it will take you more than 1 hour. You know more than you think. So try to put it together and have that document always just ready for whenever. And it's also an exercise to just have it in front of your mind. So whenever someone asks you, just find yourself saying it very smoothly. So once you know your story, I think there's always a question we need to ask ourselves: are we the face of our work online? Do people associate that organization with ourselves? And it's usually it's the case. So do you want this to remain or not? So if you're the face of your work online, then you'll find yourself in with an obligation to always represent that. And I personally, I was the face of my work for a long time, and then I got bored with it and it started to be overwhelming for me. So I decided to just shift the focus from me to my organization, and now everything that I want to say, I say it through the organization. So that's also a choice. So where do you stand? Where do you want to do? If you feel like you're the face right now and you need to move forward with that, so you can expand your work, uh, have this, make sure that you know what's your position in this. Am I the face or I'm not the face? If you're the face, then you have to create that online persona around the work, around and to present your work. And one thing I would advise you to do online is to always use the same spelling for your name. Make sure that always, all the time, you spell your name the same way in any bio, in any website, in any social network. Make sure that you have the same spelling, because it's our reality now. If someone is looking us, want to know something about us, the first thing they will do, they will Google us. And this is this is honestly, this is the reason why when someone Googles my name, they find everything about me, everything that I've done, everywhere I was mentioned. I make sure that it's the same spelling. So that's very important. Make sure you have that. And then once you know that you're the you know your story, people knows you now, you're the face of your work, make sure to engage in conversation, state your opinion, and people will start looking for you to actually, for example, in anything that's related to gender challenges and women, violence against women in Sudan, people comes to me and ask me for my opinion. So I find myself engaging in different conversations on Facebook, on Twitter, and I state my opinion. And but you also need to know that it could be tiring. So it's something that you have to decide how much I want to engage, and I want to be the face of my work. Don't be modest, flex. And I say flex, not, it's not because it's not bragging, it's not a matter of bragging here. I'm doing work for the society, and I personally believe that we all have a role to do, to a role to play in changing this in our societies. So it's not a matter of bragging, it's just a matter of you flex, you know, you show that you show that you know what you're doing, you show that you understand the subject matter. So always make sure that you're stating your opinion in a way that make you look like an expert. So always use the language of an expert in this matter, and you are, in fact, because if you spend five some spend their 10 years of their life in that field, so you definitely know more than you think you do. So please flex and show that you know this, and share it online, share articles about this subject from different places. So be sort of position yourself as the person who knows about this, not only in our in the specific community working on, but also from other communities, and sort of show your network around that. My Facebook profile is any person that I've met in my life who work in this field, in the field I work in, I have them there. So whatever I write, whenever someone wants something, I use that network. So it's also a way to, yeah, the online persona, you from through your online persona and your presence online, you show your network. So make sure that you have that, and it's a very valuable asset. So make use of it. Also, always it's good to create blogs, article, videos, because if people have your profiles, and they have your the Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, they will see a very little part of you. But through blogs, through writing articles, creating videos online, this is where you show your analytical skills, you show the analysis you have, that you express your ideas more vocally. So it's this is one of the good ways to actually create that online persona around your work. So make sure you have that. And we like some people don't write blogs because they say people don't read them. It's not necessarily for people to read, but it's sort of documenting your work and the analysis. And it's, I think it's something also, there's something that I'm not sure if it's scary. I find it in some ways scary, because if you write blogs on regular basis, someone can actually look at the maturity and the knowledge and skills you have gained through the year. So if you write a blog about something in 2012, and you handle the same subject, write another blog in 2018, during this time you will gain so much. You have gained so many more experience and more knowledge, and people would be able to see how you matured in this subject. So this is one of the advantages, and this is a way of advantages of using your creating an online persona. It makes it easier for people to know more about you, about what you're doing, about your hobbies. So if you're comfortable with that, if that's something you like, some people, and honestly, there are people who are just born this way, who are good at this, who doesn't have to learn it. So if you are this person, like you won't be struggling. But if you're not, it may need little more work. So keep on doing it, and I'm sure all of you have that now. Yeah, so questions, comments, points to add to the online persona and the online presence?
Basil has just asked a great question in the chat in terms of, are there resources that you would recommend where we start for blogging?
Honestly, I write blogs. I don't have a blog that under my name, but I write blogs for different organizations. So for example, I write blogs, and I'm very interested in economics empowerment, economic development. So I write blogs, and then I share them with the World Bank through a context, or if they have like something called blog for development, blog for dev, for the Africa continent. So I wrote a blog about digital transformation, and I shared it, and it was shared on their website under my name. And I also wrote blogs for the UNDP, for example. So it doesn't have to be a blog that dedicated for you. Not everyone likes that. I personally don't like to have a blog where I share regularly, but I don't use it, but I write blogs for different entities. So you could go about that way. You either have your own blog, or you could write blog for other organizations who always share to share your work.
I think that's a really great point in terms of like, don't put too much energy into trying to grow your own audience when there are platforms out there that have the audiences and have the platforms and the tech all set up so that you get to do the writing, right? And you get to focus on the storytelling. I've included one in the chat, but we'll also kind of create a list of some of these great ones that are good to submit to, that are looking for youth voices and voices from the Arab region and those kind of things. And we'll include those. We'll add a slide to this deck and post it online so that everybody can get some good ideas, hopefully.
Other question, comments? I can't monitor the list of participants, so I don't know who raised their hand and who doesn't. Yeah, I think I can see it now. Yeah. I don't see hands on.
I think we're good to go for the next bit of interaction is coming up. You all get a job pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's talk about you on the stage. So you have an online, you have a story that you share with the world, wherever you have that document that you can use for whatever. And then you have an online presence. So that online presence usually lead to people inviting you to speak at conferences and the UN at any level. It could be regional, it could be national. So, and I had experience with all of these stages. So and I'm sort of sharing what the things that I didn't do included at the beginning, and I didn't do, and I start doing now, and it's worked perfectly. So for me at least. So once you get an invitation to speak somewhere, study the whole situation. Ask yourself, why did they choose me? It's, yes, it's my story, but why me specifically? And because there's so many people who are doing that other work, so what's that thing? And you could also ask them, why did you choose me? So you can have more idea about what they're looking for, rather than just asking what what I supposed to talk about. And then once you know why they chose you, you ask yourself, who are they? So who wants me to talk at this stage? Is it a local organization? Who are who is this organization? Who are their partners? Who are their funders? So you just have an idea about all the stakeholders involved with this organization, or this entity that invited you. And then where am I going to be speaking? Is it an online format? Is it am I speaking at the UNHQ? Am I speaking at the conference, in the regional conference, a national conference? Is it who's gonna be there? Who are the, like, again, who are the stake? Because now you ask who they are, so you know, sort of have an idea about who's gonna be present in that format. So, and then ask yourself what at stake. What the subject? What are the political conflict that relate to the subject? What are the economic, history, geography? Yeah, we need to understand the whole context and ask all these questions, and try to identify if there is, like, if, for example, I'm speaking at this country, and this country maybe have problems with my country, so I need to be aware of that. So when I'm preparing my speech, when I'm preparing what I'm going to be right, I understand that there's things I may need to be more careful about. In terms of economics, it is a country that, yeah, because it's not, when we're on a stage, we're representing ourselves, we're representing our organizations, we're representing our countries, even if like if it's not declared that we're representing our country. But since I'm Sudanese, and in every stage, people look at me as the Sudanese speaker. So just try to understand the whole situation. Then to think about, once you have this answers in your head, and you have all these ideas, think about the distance and position. I took a class last semester, in my last semester, about 3/3 methodology. And our professor asked us to look for a research topic, and then try to position ourselves in that community. And she gave I'm not sure if you have watched it, but she gave the required reading was watching The Wire, and then look at the different positions, like in every conversation, where every person stands. And it was very interesting to because when you understand distance and position, you start to realize the power dynamics in the room. So are you speaking in front of students, or you're speaking students who are way younger than you and have less experience than you, or you're speaking in front of politicians? And that's and once you know who's in the room, you can position yourself within this room, so you will know to what extent what you need to use, what the language you will the type of language you will be using. Do I need to use and there used to be big jargons to that's most likely the people in the room will understand? Do I need to use very simple language? So it helps you a lot when you see where you stand from everyone in the room, and sort of look at the power dynamics, because you also don't want to trigger someone with your speech. You don't want to say something that is very insensitive. So be careful of that, and try to sort of measure the distance between your audience and position yourself in that room, and make sure that you're like on the same, you stand on the same distance from everyone. Being vocal. Some people like to be vocal. They are born that way, but it's also a choice. And so many times when you're in the stage, you just put that idea in your head that, oh, I need to impress these people, and I need to say the greatest speech in the world. and I need to, so sometimes we driven by that, speaking from experience, speaking driven by that motive, you find yourself saying things you shouldn't be saying. And you too, as we as a generation, there's always like, it's too loud. It's nice to be too loud, but you don't have to be all the time. But it's also a choice. So if you like to be too loud, it's up for you, but it's also reflecting part of yourself. Do you want to show that side or not? So be vocal, but it's also a choice. Sensitivity comes from when we understand the political, the economic, the history, the geography. So once we know that, we know where we need to be sensitive. And also when we understand who is the stakeholders, we know what we should be saying, what we shouldn't be saying. So we also need to consider the sensitivity of the topic that we're talking about. And then learn the language. And I don't mean learn the language in terms of like, oh, speak good English or speak good Arabic. That's not the point. But it's more of the language that it's used in this subject, in the subject that you're talking about. So read for other, read others, listen to other speeches, read other articles about the subject. Even if you're an expert in this, but also listen for other people who have talked about the same subject in that same stage, and try to grasp the language. No, and not like it, and I don't mean speak the same way they do. No, just that the language that's used in this stage at this level. I love improvising. I love to show sort of a sense of humor. So if you are good at that, do it. It's you, no matter how much you prepare, you'll find yourself improvising. It's nice to improvise at stage, but you come prepared and always practice. Have that written piece. You sticking to it and not it's something you decided. You decide once you're on stage, because you look around, you start talking, and then you feel everyone is not engaged. Then that idea comes in your mind, and you say it. It's good to know that you're improvised, but come prepared and make sure that you practice whatever you're saying. Also, please don't lose yourself on stage, because sometimes when I was younger and less experienced, I would be invited somewhere, and then people would give me like something to read, and I hated it because it wasn't me, it wasn't what I want to reflect. So I regret doing that. But it's something that I learned, that don't lose yourself, because it's, you know what you're talking about, your experience. So please make sure that you don't just read something that's written for you. Prepare your own thing and tell your own story. Yeah. So this is what I would say on stage. I see that we have hands up. Yeah. Oops.
Yeah, Atiab wants to say something.
Yes, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand the first point, which is study the whole situation. If you could kindly briefly just be repeating and understanding this.
Okay, so what I mean by understanding the whole situation is thinking about like, why were you invited, why did they choose you, who they are, what they want you to speak about. So sort of building that holistic understanding about the whole situation. And that you, so for example, if you're invited to speak, if a university invites you to give a speech in front of ministers in a conference in front of ministers, and they're going to be students. So, and this is what they tell you, that you want you to talk about peace building in X country, and they're going to be students, and we're inviting the Minister of Education or the Minister of Peace Building. So, and that's all what you know. So, and that's not enough to build a case, to know what you're going to be presenting. So what you should be doing is you start to ask yourself, to better understand the situation, is ask yourself, why did they choose me? So you can know what they're expecting from you. And also, who are they? It's the university. So who are who are the stakeholders of this university, who's engaged with this university, what's their political stand, and etc. And then where am I going to be speaking? Is it a Zoom link? Am I going to be speaking online? Is it hosted in the university? So that meaning more students are going to be attending, or it's going to be hosted in another location. In the ministry, for example, it's organized by the university, but it's going to be hosted at the minister. So that means more people from the ministry are going to be present. So once you know that, it also helps you in understanding the stakeholders better and better, and who's going to be there. And then what's the stake? What the stake meaning? What's the political the political sphere right now? Are there conflict with a new country? Are we in a civil war situation? It's then economics. There are other demonstrations outside because the prices has gone high. So once you understand the situation and the status quo, what's happening in the present, it will help you in formatting your speech and also anticipating questions that may be asked to you as a speaker. So it's the first thing to do before you start writing down your speech. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Atiaf is nodding. Great. Thanks, Atiaf, for that clarifying thing. Moneera, I'm thinking about time, and I wonder, let's maybe go to the orange pair exercise. So I think 2 more slides.
You're already there, right?
Perfect. So you are going to be put into a very random breakout room with one other person. Your job is to practice this right now. Introduce yourself and your work. Think about how to be brief, but also, engaging and compelling, and how to showcase yourself and the impact that you're having. And one just tip in terms of when you're doing this in smaller groups, always end your introduction, if it's in a small meeting, in an elevator pitch, when you're attending a special event or that kind of thing, by inviting somebody else or acknowledging somebody else, right? So whether that's something like, and I'd love to hear more about you, or I know so-and-so is also in the room and they work on this, or that kind of thing, right? So, and that's one way to kind of move from the bragging right back to the humble part of things. So you'll have just about 12 minutes or so. We'll call you back. I'll send a text alert to make sure that you've swapped if you haven't yet, but introduce yourself just in about a minute. Have the person give you feedback about your introduction and your story and how you can do that. And then kind of try and run it through a couple of times. Then we'll come back and Moneera has a few more tips about common challenges and ways to move through this. So here we go into Zoom's just going to automatically assign you to things, and here we go.
أهلا وسهلا.
Hi.
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 That was not enough time. In my
Hello.
It was not enough at all.
Brief.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's really
Firas
hard
and
to like
Mahmoud
tell
in
a
my group.
compelling story in like
Yeah,
90
my friend
seconds.
was introducing himself.
And we were 3 people.
When my turn is come,
I know,
just
but
leave the room.
sorry, we had one 3-person group, but okay, not enough time. But
It's okay.
I
Welcome
think
back.
it's also really important to highlight, like, it's really hard to do this quickly. And that's part of why it's so tricky when you're in a group meeting, right? And like how to introduce yourself and kind of boil your story down to basically a tweet, right? And we're going to give you all some homework to do that, and we'll give you some feedback on it. But before we assign that homework, we've got another 15 minutes. So Moneera is going to conclude by just kind of talking through some of the common challenges and ways that those can be overcome. And you all just experienced one of the main ones. And the answer to that is practice, practice, and preparation, right? So that you can keep shrinking that down and just have it come really naturally to do it quickly. So back to Moneera for some common challenges.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry. Challenges. Yeah, here we are. Sorry about that. Yeah, so as Becca mentioned, it's really hard to introduce yourself, and it will take a lot of time, but I'm sure you will get there. And once you recognize this as a problem, you start working on it. And it's one of the most common challenges that we face when we're introducing ourselves, that we don't usually have enough time. So make sure to like, and I think there's also another way to, beside practicing, is understanding where you are, and the part about understanding the situation. So you will know who's in the room, what are they interested in, so you sort of link whatever you're going to say about yourself with the interest of the room. So yeah, that's also one way to go about it. And one of the very common challenges is that the fact that this is very uncomfortable. We were not raised up in a way to talk, and especially for in my culture, not like allowed to express ourselves. So I still find it really hard to tell my story and be vocal about what I'm doing. But also sort of, and it's not comfortable, but it's a matter of experience, and it's come with experience and with years. And the more you advance in your work, the more you will be clear in your vision, in your mission, and in your goals. So it's okay if you're not comfortable now. You will get there, I'm sure. It could be exhausting, especially when you are the face of your work and everyone associate not just the work with you, but the whole challenge. You're the face of it, and you're always expected to be very proactive in this situation and very loud in this situation. And whenever you say something that's not expected, people will criticize you. It could be very exhausting and too much to handle, especially online. And with the online, you know how the online world work, bullying and targeting, and it's ugly. But then you will find your balance. It's also the good thing that, but through time, you'll find your balance. You'll find yourself, know where to talk, where not to talk, which platforms to use. I used to use Facebook excessively and express my opinions, and it's became too much because everything I say I became a target of it. So I sort of found that balance where I know what to share and what not to share, who to express my opinion with, who not to. So you will find that balance. Also, mistake happens, and it's fine if you go on a stage and you just and the result is not as you expected. But these and or you have said something that you shouldn't have said. It's don't be very hard on yourself about it, but rather take it as a learn to way, because and honestly, we learn the hard way. So, and because it's the only way, basically, there is no other way to learn. No matter how sessions you learn, when you make mistake, that's the time when you actually learn. So you'll always feel it's not enough. So but it's always way better than you think. So whenever you feel that it's not enough, tell yourself, oh, this is what I have, this is what I can present, and I'm 100% sure that it's way better than what I think. And a living example is when Becca and Hadja told me that, oh, we think you're great at this. I was like, I never thought myself as great. So keep that in mind also. And also ask yourself, am I really bragging? Actually, you're not bragging. I mean, you could brag with something you buy, and this is what bragging is associated with, is something we like, things we more materialistic things. But what the work we're doing is important work, and I honestly think you should brag about it, because you're dedicating your time, your effort, your life for it. So bragging may not be the right word in this situation. So don't look at it as a way to brag, but look at it more as some flexing about the experience, sharing your knowledge. So look at it from that perspective, and it's also help you with making yourself more comfortable when telling your story. Yeah. So that's it for me, the common challenges. Maybe if someone has something to share, a challenge that you have faced in this, when you're telling your story, that you'd like to share with everyone. Mm-hmm. If no, maybe we should move forward, Becca.
Thanks, Moneera. Do you want to go ahead and click on to the next one for me, sideways? You can. Brilliant. Oh, one more. We obviously don't have time for this bit. Actually, no, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to try it. You all definitely did not have time, right? You've just realized how you don't have time in a group, just a pair, to introduce yourself. The next thing though asks you to identify some kind of UN event that you'd like to speak at. We won't have time to do the first 3 minutes of your speech, but what I'd like you to do in the next group that you'll be assigned to is talk about where your kind of dream keynote speech is, right? Like, who do you want to talk to? The Security Council, a particular agency, the Conference on Biological Diversity, the next COP, something, right? In the UN space or another big international organization where you want to keynote, and talk together about what you would need to do to be ready for that. What story would you highlight, right? And how would you start preparing for that? Okay, you're gonna have to really quickly introduce yourselves again to this next person because it will be different, right? And then be ready to kind of think through, what is my goal with this? So here we go. You're gonna have even less time this time. So good luck. And here, you'll have like 3 people probably this time, 2 or 3 people. Here you go.
We need more time.
That's everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, this time was even more unfair.
It was so quick.
Prompt for so.
That was even difficult.
But again, I hope this kind of emphasizes like how much you want to be ready for these kind of things and be able to just kind of jump in, right? And know how to showcase yourself in about 20 seconds so that you can then get to the good stuff, right? Into the dialogue and not kind of get so stuck in the, and then this happened, and then this happened. So we will keep practicing, don't worry. And there will be lots of other ways to do that. Moneera, do you want to maybe—
This training made me feel like doing the elevator pitch, I think.
Yes, yeah. We do really want to get you to a good elevator pitch so that you then can get to the more substantive content, right? Because online, people don't have any more attention span, right, than they do elsewhere. So we have some homework for everybody. From this, you've seen how important and hard it is to shrink your story down. We've talked about how important a really great arc for a story is, right? With Moneera's really, really helpful overview at the beginning about identifying your aha moment and your problem and showcasing how your initiative is solving that problem and the impact you've had. So what you need to do now is sometime in the next week or so, think about what's most important to share about you. Think about how you're going to shrink that story down as much as you can and write a statement that is your personal story brand for online. It should be in Twitter format. And you're going to send it to this form. We'll email this out and it will be on the website. But if you send us a tweet that tells your story really well, Moneera, Haja, and I, along with the rest of the wider Amends and Shugul Shabab teams, will give you some feedback on your tweet. And if they're really good, we will also highlight them on our social media channels. And then other Lins may choose to do a few of theirs as well. We also will post these slides around. Moneera, do you want to go one more slide for me, please? We've started a list of blog platforms that you can submit to. We'll add some more of these. If any of you have blog platforms that you run or that you know about or that you've written on before, please email those through. We'll keep a list together so that we can have that as a shared resource. And part of why we wanted to do this at the very beginning of the training series is because for all of the other external guests that we have, we're going to ask some of you to introduce yourselves, right? And you're going to want to do it quickly so that you impress an external trainer without taking 15 minutes of everybody's training time, right? It's a really, really tricky challenge, but we know that you all can rise to it, and practice is the right way to go for it. So are there final kind of questions, thoughts, ideas, things that you want to grab Moneera's brain on before we wrap up for the day? Yeah, go ahead, Atyab.
Hi, I'm sorry I couldn't get the homework exactly.
Great, we'll email this out as well with the slides, but it is to write a tweet showcasing your impact, and we'll submit that on the Google form. Mohammed?
Yeah, thank you so much. I just want to stress on the importance of the quick workshop Moneera gave. Like, I was really in need for that, because whenever I am in need to type a biography, like, I know what I have done and I know what I am doing, but when putting it in a word, it's crazy difficult. I can't really express how crazy is that. So thank you so much for this.
It's always much harder to also talk about and write about yourself. So another thing that I would suggest that you do, now that we have this network, next time you're asked to do this, drop a note in the WhatsApp group, right? And say, I have to write a bio for this. Can somebody kind of like look over my bullet points and help me craft the story, right? Because it's always easier to do it for somebody else, right? And kind of get that balance between not bragging and showing off the story, right? So do make use of each other as well.
So is it a biography about me or the activities we're doing with my initiative organization?
Great question. So you get one Twitter or you get one tweet and you need to decide, okay? So it can be about you and your personal brand, or you can do one that is really kind of from the voice of your initiative and your organization, or you can try and do one that does both. For example, if you look at my Twitter bio, right, it's like environmental peace building researcher working with, and then I at the organizations that I want to amplify, right, who are like my biggest partners. So I'm kind of trying to do both in very limited number of characters.
Oh yeah,
kind of giving a shout out and sending people, you know, for kind of if this theme interests you, you're going to click through and go find more about them.
Brainstorming.
Sadir.
Yep. So I feel you guys were planning this all along since you gave us the slides where we had to put only 10 words for our description. But yeah, I think one of my biggest struggles would be, so I've done a lot of things, so I'm not sure where to focus my story. And when I'm talking about like a lot of achievements or a lot of what I do, it kind of does not lay out to be a story, but more like bullet points, which is the difficult part, I think, for me.
I think that is
like
such a great point, Sadir. Yeah, like it's a CV. And I think that's a great point to make. And it's true of all of us, right? Like none of us are a single story. We're all multiple stories, right? And we have multiple strands of ourselves. And we have our day job and the project that we work on and our best friend's organization that we do a lot of volunteering with, right? And we also love to hike and bake and all of these other things. So I think part of this and part of what Moneera was giving with our framework, when you're thinking about your audience, you want to think through like which part of my story is going to resonate the most with this group, right? Like which strand, which chapter of it is kind of most important to amplify and tell right now, right? And so one thing that I really recommend doing is kind of, we're making you only submit one tweet, but write 10, right? Like to them for different parts of yourself and different parts of the organizations and that kind of thing. And start kind of thinking through like, what is my 2-sentence biography and, you know, kind of 30-second elevator pitch when I'm, you know, in a room talking about the Sustainable Development Goals with an international audience? How does that change if I'm talking to a group of gender advocates in a certain country, right? Where it doesn't need to be as international, right? Or it's not like they're all already in the gender space or the sustainability space, right? So like, I don't need to tell the story that sustainability matters. I need to tell more specifics about what I do, right? And the more you kind of practice and build these mini stories that you can then just kind of pull out of your library and tell anytime, the better. Don't try and get all of your life into one tweet, right? It will never happen, but you can share one compelling part of it.
That's a great tip. Thank you.
All right, last word to Moneera, and then we will wrap up and let everyone get on with their days.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you have learned something or two. And please stay in touch. Becca will share my contact information, my LinkedIn and my email. And I will end with 2 notes. One, the whole point of this session was to sort of look at the informal aspect, the online persona, preparing for like general telling your story in a very general way. And then there is different context that you're going to be dealing with, but it's a good starting point because you're going to be using it for your personal statement that you'll submit for your higher education, for your any application for program you're applying. So it's a good starting point. So once you have that, you will make it it will be easier to deal with the more formal part. Also, in this subject of your creating a online persona and sort of advertising yourself, if it's enough to do it yourself, but if you think that you're really struggling, there are coach, you can ask support from the people do this as full-time job. They just coach you on how to present yourself online, so you can use that, reach out for people in this field, and especially if you work in a field that's very sensitive and there is a lot of public relations involved, so you can also reach out for support. Don't forget. And yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much once again, and I was very, very, very happy to be part of this, and good luck with the rest of your program. Hope to talk soon and stay in touch.
Shukran bizaf to Moneera. Shukran to everyone. Laila Tov, Laila Sayyida. Have a wonderful evening, day, wherever it is in your time zone. And we look forward to seeing you at the end of February to talk about design thinking.